Okay. All right, folks, this is the Independent Black Voters on Facebook during our series of candidates selections. Today we have Miss Shavaz, say your name.
It's Cavazos. You're very
Cavazos.
true.
Yes,
Cavazos.
Miss Cavazos. I'm just having a
Got
mind
it.
meld here.
Sure.
But she is presently on the school board and running for re-election. Is it for District G?
Yes, that's correct, Brian.
Folks, I'm going to start off by saying that the school board is very important. We must be informed voters. We must vet out the candidates. Unfortunately, at the present time right now in Clark County, more than ever, we must bring some semblance of reality to the board. We are presently very dysfunctional. The kids hurt on what's going on, and it does start at the top. Everywhere from not only the leader, but the school board and the students, and more importantly, the parents. So the parents out here, please take a minute and watch this as we discuss and talk a little bit about the school board, and we'll talk to Miss Fake I'm messing it up.
I think of like the Cleveland Cavaliers or
Okay.
Cavazos.
Cavazos, yes. And I'm sorry, Cavazos, I'm having a mind melt right now.
That's okay. You can practice.
So we're going to let you start off, Ms. Cavazos. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you do, what the school board, as far as the school board, why you ran for the school board, and just set us up to tell us a little bit about where we are and why you should be reelected so that we can then ask you some pertinent questions. So I'm going to shut up and let you talk.
All right. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate this opportunity telling you a little bit about myself. I was first appointed to the board to fill a vacancy, and it wasn't a regular kind of appointment as far as it being an outside entity. When you have a school board member leave before the end of their term, and this was a trustee that was leaving to go back to school. She was going back to law school. And so I had to go through a vetting process, and I was selected from a pool of, I believe it was 12 candidates, and that was in August of 2017. So part of the process is that they ask you, the school board is the one who actually vets you and appoints you, and they have to do it by a majority vote. So one of the things they ask you is, if we go through all this and we appoint you and we train you, do you make a commitment, short of, say, a medical emergency or something like that, to run for reelection in 2018? So it was about a year. And I said, yes, I will. And I did. I feel right now, so I finished, this is finishing up one 4-year term and then an extra 1 year appointed term. Brian, I feel like my work is not done. As you mentioned in your introduction, we have a lot of things in disarray right now. The thing that's troubling me the most personally right now, as an ex-school teacher, I taught 15 years here in Clark County as a high school teacher. And I just see kids without teachers. I mean, we have classrooms that do not have qualified teachers. We do not have a wide diversity of teachers. I was honored to be the first Latina to ever be elected to the Clark County School Board. I take that responsibility very seriously because about approximately 40% of my constituents in District G come from very low income, high need neighborhoods in East Las Vegas. And by hook or crook, my husband and I managed to get 5 children through CCSD, and they didn't all take traditional paths. They all, only 2 really took a traditional path, and we got them through the Clark County School District. So I have that parental perspective, and I just feel that with not having enough teachers right now, with the school safety issues, I just feel that my experience can serve our communities well, because our parents, our families, they need, our schools need to be the hubs of our communities, and they need to be inclusive. And I feel that I have more work to do, and I want to do that in collaboration with the entire board. You're muted. Can't hear you. Brian, you're muted. Muted.
Bear with me. I just sent Tracy. I just sent Tracy a email. Hopefully, she will jump on.
Oh,
We can
wonderful.
talk. Huh? Yeah.
Wonderful.
So bear with me. I'm going to. I just. See. So she just called me. So.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were muted.
Yep. Check email. So okay. Great. So great. So again, I apologize for that because I have a lot of respect for Miss Lewis, and I invited her to come on. Uh, you're on the money when you talk about what's going on. I think we all know what the problems are, but the solution is the big issue because I have two hats. Unfortunately, my kids are grown, obviously, but my grandchildren are in CCSD. So from the parent or grandparent aspect, I look at it, but also I look at it from the aspect of the taxpayer, because many times we keep throwing money at the issue, but we're not throwing the money at the right places. And because we don't throw the money at the right places, we ask the taxpayer to give us more money, but we don't really come up with solutions that are really going to fix our school system. You talked about the fact that many areas there are no teachers teaching. And how can you expect to have a school system, functional school system, where predominantly the areas where they have the worst amount of teacher shortage are in the lower economic and predominantly Black and brown students? Am I correct on that statement?
You are correct.
Mm-hmm. So again, give me your thoughts again, because where do you see we're going in the school system, and where do you think we need to go to address these problems?
Well, we have the status, I'll call it the status quo answers. And I don't know if Tracy's ever told you this. I know we've just chatted a couple times on the phone, but I'm a very direct person. And when you say we're throwing money uh, at these issues without coming up with viable solutions, I'm with you on that. And one of the big things that I think that we're doing is that we come up with all these great plans and workforces and things that look fabulous on the computer or on a piece of paper or whatever, but then we don't roll them out correctly where they will impact the kids that need the help the most. So when we say that that the highest need neighborhoods are the ones that don't have the teachers, we keep talking. When I say we, I'm going to collectively say the district, because I'm going to accept partial responsibility for that. As you well know, I know you're well informed that the trustees do not have operational authority, but we have to take responsibility for having oversight. And that's part of our job description. So when we talk about the pipeline, okay, we're going to hire brand new high school graduates. That's not a solution. We need to be looking at what about maybe the people that left temporarily the district? Maybe they had a medical issue, or they like I retired early from the district to move with my husband to another state. Well, that got canceled. And I came back and I reapplied. Are we reaching out to some of those people? Are we reaching out to the professionals in our business communities? I'm a small business owner, so I'm worried about those taxes where most go. So we're not reaching out to some of the folks can come in and share their expertise, and not can't be, the only person that looks like my constituents. Or if they would let me, I would substitute teach 1 or 2 days a week, a few days a month, but we're not allowed to. And these kids need to see people make that connection with them. Maybe I look like their mom, maybe I don't know, but they can see that people in higher positions, they could be those people. But our schools and our neighborhoods need to have folks that have the community with not just the principal, but with the folks, the parents that are taking their kids, the uncles, the aunts, everybody. If we don't start getting those new pipelines, I'm sorry, but we're just going to end up stuck here going around like on. Right now we have what, 1,200, 1,300. If you look at some of the other urban school districts, everybody says, well, this is a national problem. They've got a couple hundred, they've got maybe 300 or 400. They don't have 1,300. So I'm just going to be very honest about that. We need to be innovative, Brian. We need to look outside the box. There, so you got me going on one of my soapboxes
Yeah,
there.
but you're absolutely right. And this is more of a conversation. And I'm going to tell you something. You probably don't remember me, but probably a year and a half, 2 years, probably somewhere around there, maybe a little longer. I came to the school board and I had actually written an article because I went, is it Swanigan Junior High School?
Um, there's a
Swanston? Huh?
There's a Swainston Middle School.
School, yes. Swanston Middle School.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
Oh, are you the one? You
Huh?
went and you substitute, or you were there for a while, or
So for about for actually about 2 months. And I did it because I wanted to prove something to myself that these kids actually could be taught. And I actually wrote an article in a newspaper to write up, and then I brought the information and submitted it because you're right in the fact that there's solutions, but everybody wants to kick the can down. I've said this multiple times, and I'm going to come back and maybe I can talk to you some more.
Sure.
I have a undergrad in electrical engineering technology. I have an MBA from Purdue University. I'm 62 years old. I don't want to go get a teacher's period, but I can teach better than most teachers when it comes to math, especially algebra, which is an area that is lacking. And I literally took these kids on for 2 months, and I told them I wouldn't leave. They couldn't run me out of there, and that they were going to learn math, and I'd leave on my own terms. And literally, I had a young Hispanic boy. When I left, the day I left, he said, "Mr. Harris, when you first came in here, I couldn't stand you. I couldn't wait for you to leave. But now I'm learning math, and I hate the fact that you're leaving." I had young ladies that I called their parents and told them that they were not performing. They didn't like it, but it went from F to B's. It's not about having a teacher's degree. It's number one, having the ability to teach, the desire to have those kids learn, and then going out and make it happen. If we have 1,200 teachers done, you should be able to look at something as crazy as, okay, if we can't bring people in as teachers, let's bring them in as specialized assistants, but pay them. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about pay them well. Pay them actually as much, if not more, than a teacher, with caveats that say you have to stay here for the period. We're going to pay you. We're going to pay you like the professional you are, but we're also going to measure your success on your ability to teach in the skill sets of math or science or the STEM types. We're going to put you in these schools, and we're going to try to find people who are retired, who look like the students they're teaching, who aren't afraid of these kids. Because, see, I was there in that 2 periods, and I saw young people who didn't look like the students, that they actually had fun running them out of the classroom.
Yes.
And while they try to put incentives to bring students into these places, they come in with good intentions, but they end up losing interest. Why? I grew up in Gary, Indiana. In Gary, Indiana, my teachers lived in my community. Mm-hmm. My teachers looked like me. My teachers had a vested interest in seeing me successful. If your teachers, even if you bring them in and they all live in Henderson and they all live in Summerlin and they don't look like the people they're teaching, they have no vested interest in the success of these kids. You know, I shake my head when we can spend $28 million on one school because of a safety issue, but we want to bring in barely out of high school kids to babysit in the areas that need the students the most. We got to stop trying to just kick the can down and say we don't know how to fix. We do know how to fix it. If we can't get teachers, bring in qualified, retired folks, but pay them their value,
Mm-hmm.
And you would see an improvement in the school systems, even with the need for schools. Don't call them teachers. Call them specialized assistants. Pay them the worth so that they are like sitting here. If a person is making $100,000, but they have the skill sets, why do they really want to come in and work for $12 an hour, or $8 an hour, or $9 an hour, and work their butts off? And they'd be willing to take some types of initiatives, say, this is your objective. And if you hit this objective, we got bonuses for you. But you know what? You got to think out the box and not just throw your hands up. Or what really incites me is I'm giving you some consulting news that many people are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars to put these plans together that don't make sense, never work. And it's a waste of the taxpayers' money. We spend so much money on these consultants. Mm-hmm. We tunnel it and spend it on putting qualified, and I'm not saying teachers, qualified people into the system that really have a vested interest in the success of the system. Because it's funny, a lot of people did this, and I'm going to ask your opinion. Again, you can choose to do it. I know they just started putting fathers, quote, into the schools. Mm-hmm. As a Black man, I'm very concerned about that. I'm very concerned the first time that there is an issue between a different class of father and it explodes into something. We don't need, I see that as just putting in, another security force instead of spending the money and bringing in some teachers to teach. Because, see, we had male teachers, we had female teachers, they weren't afraid of us. We didn't need a security force. We didn't need to have parents roaming the halls because they respected the teachers that were there, because they looked like them, because they empathized with them, and because they weren't afraid of them. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, it does make sense. And the program that you're referring to, Dads in Schools, it's not meant to be something that takes the place of teachers or security. But I'll just, again, be very direct. It's a temporary Band-Aid. I think that they can have some assistance as far as being a presence, but it's more like a presence like having, like for instance, at the school I taught at in small town, Old Henderson, not Green Valley, but Old Henderson. I taught 15 years at basic high school. Mm-hmm. I'm still friends with some of my students and some of the teachers that I taught with. It was very close knit. I lived very close to that community. The community that I represent right now, a lot of it starts in Green Valley. Actually, Green Valley High School is my south boundary. Mm-hmm. But most of my constituency is over in East Las Vegas, going up to like Etta and Hollywood and Sunrise Mountain. And that's where I lived when I first moved to Las Vegas. I lived there for about 15 years. So when you talk about having some folks in the classroom, we can give them whatever kind of title. And I think that we could find a good working relationship there between the teachers that, they have the classroom management techniques, they're veterans. One of the things that was very controversial just recently, and it's out there, so I can say it, I was the only one, it was 6-1. I was in favor of paying beginning teachers more money to try to recruit. But you don't just recruit people. You need to retain them. You need to make them want to be here by giving them good working conditions, by letting them have a relationship with those kids. Because if you don't have a relationship with those kids that you're working with, what did you just say right now? That little guy told you, I couldn't stand you, Mr. Harris, but I'm learning math and I don't want you to leave. And you even it sounds like you went the extra mile in reaching out to the parents also and letting them know. One of the things I used to love to do, Brian, was to call a parent and they'd say, oh my God, what did so-and-so do now? And I'd say, I just want to let you know that they've been doing a great job. They've been picking up on their performance, and they'd be so shocked because I was calling them to let them know that their child was doing better, that they weren't in trouble. And I think that right now, with the discouragement that our workforce is feeling, they don't feel respected. they don't feel valued. And you said the key word, as a professional. And so, yeah, are there some, I used to teach classroom management. I supervised student teachers at UNLV after I left basic. That was because we were moving to Atlanta. My husband's transfer got canceled. And I'll just tell you right now, I still hold a grudge against AT&T, okay, because that's who did that. But, you know, I jumped right back into it. And sometimes I would go out and supervise a student teacher, and they would have all the book knowledge, like what my dad used to call book smarts, but you need to have some common sense too. You need to have some street smarts. And so I think that if we tap into the wealth of talent that we have in our community right now, we're going to be in a much better place. And this doesn't mean that we're going to ignore our veteran teachers. I voted against that memorandum because it was basically ignoring the veteran teachers, and it was taking away some of their, should we say, their expertise and all the years they had put into their neighborhoods and their schools. And we can't do that. We must respect everyone and give them credit for what they've accomplished.
And absolutely, but they have to also understand, if you're not willing to go in these areas that are lower economic, and you're not willing to go in these areas and teach, then don't get upset because we're using different standards to get these teachers taught. I mean, these kids caught. You know, again, it is not a disrespect to a veteran teacher who's sitting over here in Henderson and has pretty much what they want. The kids, let's face it, economics, behavior and economics go together. So they don't have to deal with these issues, or do they want to go there. So don't get your nose out of joint because we're going to pay some people who maybe aren't teachers, but they have the skill sets to be able to work in that environment. They're not afraid of the kids, and know what to do. It's interesting. My granddaughter is over here in Henderson, and she didn't realize I know math pretty well. And her father said something to her a couple of days ago. She says, "You need to ask Granddad. He knows how to do it." So I showed her how to do algebra the old-fashioned way, step by step by step, and then to check your answer.
So you were.
Yeah, she said to me, "You know, my teacher never taught me that. They just gave me a sheet and told me to go out and do this." So just because you're a teacher doesn't mean that means you, just because you're not a teacher doesn't mean you can't teach as good, if not better, especially if you love the kids, especially if you have some type of a connection with them because of they're black or brown, because you've gone through some things, because you can emulate and understand what they're doing. Sometimes is much bigger than what you have. And I'm just a believer of solutions, because we're spending all this money outside of the school, kind of come up with these solutions and these ideas that don't seem to work.
Right. And Brian, if I can piggyback on something you just said right there, when we have all of these outside consultants, when we have all these people coming in from all over the place, they do not know the demographics of our neighborhood. They might be able to say, "Oh, you know, I'm coming from Miami-Dade, or I'm coming from over here, and we have similar demographics." But are you actually buying into our community? Are you going to buy a house? Are you going to stay here? Are you going to live here and actually make a connection with the community? Or are you just going to be a face there that is actually trying to be sort of politically correct? Because I think you can tell by now that I'm pretty direct, that if you're not making that connection, our schools are so disconnected now, because some of the folks coming in there, they put in their time, they get in their cars and they drive away, right? You said, you know, and I live in Henderson right now in the Green Valley area, but I used to live in Old Henderson. I've lived on the east side. My kids went to school on the east side. My kids went to school in Old Henderson. I know the neighborhoods. I know what it's like to walk around down there. I know where the markets are. I know where the folks congregate. And I grew up in a tiny little rural community where I did have teachers that looked like me. And when I went away to a big university, I will tell you, and this is kind of like still a hurtful memory, but it was the first time I think I was a freshman. I believe I was a freshman, and I graduated very young at 17. And I had applied for some kind of student position. at Arizona State University, huge university. I came from a tiny school, and I overheard somebody saying, we don't want that wetback to apply for this position. And it just hurt me to my core, because I realized that this was a group of predominantly Caucasian folks. There was some of them that really did not mean to hurt me, but that remark made me realize you're in a different fish pond here, Linda. You are in a different arena here. They're not even looking at your abilities. They're looking at the color of your skin. They're looking at your last name. And I feel sometimes when we go into some of these schools, and I will tell you, Brian, I just got, and without saying the name of the school or any other identifying characteristics, I got an email from a young lady the other day in one of my district schools, and she's hurting. Her friends are hurting. She feels that some of the administrators are not being, they're not listening to them. They're not listening to what they need and their perspectives, and they're feeling very ignored. Nobody's listening to them. And I took that email and I passed it on to the powers that be. And I said, we need to do something about this situation. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying we need a solution. We can't have this whole group of children walking around feeling like they're second or third class.
Okay. So let me ask this next question, because this one, it's, it seems like it's a political type base. I'm for school choice. I'm not for school choice. Give me your opinion on that. And the second one is that whole concept of breaking up Clark County into smaller schools, Clark school systems. What's your opinion on both of them?
Okay, so I'll take those one at a time in the order you presented them. Now, just to clarify, Brian, when you're talking about school choice, you're not talking about like our magnet programs or our CTAs. You're talking like about the school vouchers, like is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not in favor of them, and I will just tell you that at this point right now, the way that the program is put together, it doesn't work for our highest need kids. And this is, again, you're asking for my personal opinion, right? I'm not representing a trustee position. I'm representing myself that holds a position of a trustee. I am in this position to advocate for public education. I do not like the idea of taking public education funds and giving them to people to use for private schools, or I don't know. I was raised with a mom that was very strictly religious, and a father that once in a while he'd show up for a baptism or a wedding or whatever. But so I had a lot of different perspectives, but I had friends that went to faith-based schools or went to private schools. I mean, their parents had more money. I was in a blue collar family, but their parents had to pay for those schools. They didn't take the money from a publicly issued fund, if that makes sense at all. So the way that's formatted right now, I don't see how that helps our highest need kids. I think that just gives whatever the amount is. I'm not sure. I'm not going to pretend to know whether it's 5,000 or 6,000 on these opportunity scholarships. It kind of gives basically an extra little bonus to these folks then that can pay the rest of it. But I know that if I had been given that money while I was trying to get my children through school, I didn't have enough money as a teacher to pay for the rest of the tuition. It wouldn't really do me. I'd still have this great big bill, and it wouldn't do me any good. So long answer to a short question. I'm not in favor of that. So
good. We're on the same page, and let me break it down. I'm a product of Gary Public Schools. As I said, I have an undergrad in electrical engineering technology. I have an MBA from Purdue University. Some of my friends went to private school because their parents had the money and they paid for it, and they had the choice to get a public school or not. I believe that if you make that choice to leave the public school, you leave the money in the public school. I do not believe in giving more money to segregate in many ways a school system that's already segregated right now. I'm a 60s baby. And in many ways, you see the reformation of segregation, but they just put lipstick on a pig and they call it something else. It will not solve the problem. It just reshifts it. It actually will make the problem worse because it will now reallocate funds even further away from those who need it the most. So thank you for your candor, and I'm asking for your opinion again, not the opinion in your position. Okay, the second part, breaking up the school systems.
I have listened to a lot of perspectives, and I've had a lot of people approach me on this. When they ask me, do you think the school district is too big? Well, what's too big? We're the 5th largest district. Does that mean that because you're big, you can't function effectively? I don't believe that to be true. I have researched other large urban districts. I have a lot of family that live in the LA area, and I've made friends with some of the school board members over there, LA Unified. I know people in Chicago. I know people in New York. I just think, how can I put this? I think the haves and the have-nots, I don't know that we could equitably represent everyone. And I'm gonna continue with the analogy that you and I were working on before. Like, you know, I live in a nice area of Henderson. There's Summerlin, there's Northwest Vegas and everything. What are we, I guess I'm struggling here. What are we gonna do if like this one little district over here in Summerlin, we're already having that happening. We have parents that can just pull out a checkbook and say, hey, you know, if we need to get a couple more teachers, let's do a bonus over here. Let me go ahead and fund 3 of these classrooms for these teachers. My kids over at Cunningham Elementary, my kids over at Harley Harmon, my kids over at Deering Elementary, they don't have parents that can do that. They have kids that were working during the pandemic to help, you know, to help their parents be able to pay their bills who had lost their jobs. So again, long answer to a short question. I don't think that that is the answer that people think it's going to be, like a magic solution. We're going to break up the districts. I see that as kind of like, again, I'll use your term, you know, where it's going to be maybe a different form of segregation. I don't know if that's too strong a word. That's the best word I can come up with. But it's going to get, again, the haves, the have-nots, and you're going to have these warring factions instead of trying to fix the problems in the district that we have right now. I look at it, sometimes I used to tell my high school kids, don't create a problem where there is not a problem. Create a solution where you already see a problem. And sometimes they listened to me, sometimes they didn't. But that's something I get very frustrated with right now as a trustee, because we see what the issue is, we see what the problems, but then it kind of just gets shoved over here and they hope we forget about it. And then there's this 26.2 million solution for one school that we don't get the answers of what we are actually doing with that. But how come this school over here only gets 90,000, or this school over here only gets 50,000? And that on a scale is what I would see if we broke it up. I just see a lot more problems than answers.
And thank you, because I'm gonna put it this. Segregation, the reformation of segregation is not too strong of a word, because that is. Because there will be a segregation between the color of your skin and your pocketbook. Wealth and color will come into play. And those who have the least will not get more. Now you would look up, if you broke up, all of a sudden Henderson would not be in the lower echelon of the educations. You look up, Summerlin would not be in that. They would almost overnight automatically move up in ranking as to where they are compared. And it would just mean that the areas that are still in the predominantly lower economic places would remain where they are. It would not change anything, except it would make people in Summerlin and Henderson, and I live in Henderson, happy because their school systems now do not look broke. It is putting a Band-Aid on a problem. It sounds good, but to people who have.
It does sound good to them. But what I say to them sometimes, and sometimes I'm not really the popular person in the world for saying this, but then I try to remind them that besides being an educator, I've been a parent. I have one granddaughter that is a sophomore in CCSD right now. And so I have different perspectives, but I've also been a mental health therapist now for 19 years. So I get the referrals from the school district. I get the referrals from the private schools, the charter schools, for children that are going through all of these changes. And I have to say to people all the time, Brian, are we looking at the root causes? Or are we just trying to put, like what you said, the lipstick on the pig or the Band-Aid? This looks pretty. This looks pretty, but can you show me the data can you show me the evidence that this is actually working before you bring me the next $2 million contract that you want me to approve? It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating because some people, and when I say some people, a lot of people are not well informed enough. It isn't that they're dumb or they're ignorant or anything. It's just they don't maybe have the time or the initiative to dig a little deeper. And when it comes to our kids, you have to dig a little deeper to see what's going on, because this child over here is not going to be the same child as this child over here and what their needs are. And like what you were saying before about teaching and having the expertise, and then there's that extra little effort, like we talked about, at reaching out and seeing, what do we need to do so that this child is going to learn algebra, or this child is going to learn to write an essay or be able to fill out a job application, right? Or to go to an interview. And those are real life experiences that a lot of our children right now, Brian, are coming out of high school and they don't have those skills. Absolutely. And we need to give them those skills.
Absolutely. So I'm going to come back to that, but I want to shift gears a little bit because many people don't talk about this. Would you agree there's a direct correlation between economics and education?
To a certain extent, yes, there is. I mean, we look at the poverty statistics, we look at the median incomes in some of the different districts. When we look at, let me give an example that's directly from education that I can relate to economics. And that's like, you're familiar with the STAR system in our schools. Like somebody will say, I want my child going to a 5-star school. Mm-hmm. I want my child I don't want them going here to this 1-star school. So, I'm going to apply for the zone variance or whatever. And sometimes, to be completely fair, sometimes there's a very good reason for that. Yes. Because maybe I have a special needs child that needs to have that specialized teaching skills that are offered over here. But the economics, yes, it does correlate, but it's not the only thing. The economics is not the only thing. And I say that as a small business owner too, looking at the neighborhood where my office is, where I live, where my schools are. So I think that if we can look at kind of a correlation of the economics with the education, we can kind of zero in and say, okay, what's lacking right here? How can we fill in and plug in the gaps right there? But again, I have to say, when I walk into a school and a specific school, and I see all the things and all the advantages in a certain school, and it's in my district, and then and it's wonderful. That doesn't mean I'm not happy for the kids and the staff. Then I walk into another one and I don't see those same things. I'm going to be asking the hard questions. Yeah. Sometimes people don't like you to ask the hard questions.
Absolutely. And again, I believe there is a direct correlation. When I'm talking about the economics, the average mean income of the areas that tend to have the lower performances is much smaller. Many times those parents are barely surviving. They're working 2 jobs. They're trying to figure out how not to get evicted. They're dealing with so much that they have very little time to teach their kids anything. So they're dependent on the school system, which the teachers they have nothing but substitute teachers, so they get the double whammy. And I ask that question too because here's another issue. Our school system spends a significant amount of money. Like you say, it's very hard to even track this money.
Mhm.
But as a Black man, I always say there should be a conscious effort to spend money in a way that we make sure that economically that money goes back into the communities, the Black community, the Hispanic community, etc., the white community, which it already does. I'm very concerned that we don't go out of our way to make sure that there is equity when it comes to procurement, when it comes to expenditures, so that we go out of our way. Because if you don't talk about it and you don't make it a point, you look up and say, we have a, what would you say the budget is for Clark County roughly now?
I'd say about 2.3 billion.
So we have 2.3 billion, and we look at it and say, where are those expenditures going as far as Black businesses, as far as Hispanic businesses? Are we going out of our way? I can guarantee you, without any type of look, the answer is no. It's going to the same old good old boy system, and it's going to the same set of people. And part of systemic racism, matter of fact, the biggest part of systemic racism is economics. And I think also that is not discussed enough from the school board, of trying to make sure there was equality of economics. And basically, are we spending our money back in the communities? And there should be actually a focus to spend their money in the communities that have the least, with requirements that they utilize the people in their areas. You would see a rise in the results simply by the school system leading by example and pumping some of their money back into the underserved communities. Because when you pump that economics into the underserved communities, it helps the communities rise. When the communities rise economically, they rise educationally. And a lot of people don't look at it that way, but we have a system that is a good old boy system. We have a system where we have $2.5 billion and we waste a lot of it. And even when we get contracts, there are people out of state. There's some people who do this, and the Black and brown companies suffer, which drives systemic racism, which drives down the economics, which also drives down the educational results. And a lot of people don't tie that knot together. Does that make sense?
It does. And I realize now that I was answering you more like on a global level, but now I see where you're going with that question. I would say that, and I don't know if you know former trustee, Dr. Linda Young.
I do.
Was that okay? And I've stayed in contact with her, and she helped me when I first came on the board, because of course she and the other two trustees had been there for a long time. And I shared with her that when I first came to Las Vegas, my very first job, and I was a teenager, was on the historic West Side. I was hired as a teaching assistant with Head Start. And I was talking to her about some of the new construction now in the present day that was going on. And I had to come right out and say, Dr. Young, I still see some things on the historic West Side that have not been addressed. And she said something like, I'm paraphrasing. She says, well, Trustee Cavazos, welcome to reality. And then she clued me in about on the contractors and the dearth of minority bid contractors and all these people coming in from the outside. And even now we struggle, Brian, because when the agenda is posted, we have already had our briefing with no reference materials with the draft agenda. So let me backtrack. We get a draft agenda, we look at it, has no reference materials. Then they post the agenda after we get our briefings, and we talk to the different experts, whether it is facilities or whether it's food services or whatever. But about a day before the agenda post, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, there was one gentleman that obviously did know this on Thursday night, and he says, are you guys looking at these purchasing awards? Are you looking at these line items? So about a day or two before, we get what is called the expanded purchasing awards. and they are sometimes anywhere from 20 to 40 pages with hundreds of items. And when you look at that, you're thinking, what is this? What is this widget or something that costs $200 each? And why do we have so many no bid contracts?
Yes.
And that is something that still bothers me. And then I will ask about that. And I am told, well, in this type of specific purchase, it's very common to have a no bid contract. So my question is, why? Why is it common? Why do we not have more of these contracts being spread out in the actual communities? To this date, I really have to tell you that I have not gotten what I consider an adequate answer. I just haven't. I haven't gotten an adequate answer.
Yeah, well, again, I think that's important. And I think we need to put together some type of equity of opportunity or something. The state was mandated to look at when it comes to construction jobs that were related to the state by race, the amount of workers, the amount of companies. I think the school system should be held to that same standard to start not just looking at whether they're black owned or minority owned or Hispanic owned or white owned, but not just the ownership, but their utilization of people. And it should be some type of a point system that encourages companies to go out of their comfort zone and hire people who are minorities, who are black and brown. And I say that because out of sight, out of mind. And like I say, these no bid contracts, they turn around that these are the people who make great donations to certain people to make sure they stay as no bids. And yes, I'm going to say that. That's why, as a taxpayer, I don't believe it's the fact of the lack of money in our system as more is the lack of accountability of where the money goes. And we need to have people that are on the school board who are willing to challenge. So that's going to take me and segue me. And I thank you for being open and honest. Obviously, we had a major issue with the school board and the, who am I thinking of? Who's head of the school system? The superintendent. It was messy. Obviously, the role of the school board is accountability for the superintendent to do what is right. The school board, if they are not seeing the right direction, should have the ability to fire the superintendent if the status quo is continuing and nothing is happening. Am I correct on that?
You are correct.
But it seems that, again, with no accountability, then you have no sense of urgency to fix the problem. And it seems we're in a kind of quagmire right now from our school system in the sense of we're paying a lot of money, but we're still at the bottom. And some people will say we're headed to the top, but as a person who's looking outside said, if we haven't come up with a solution and people have told you solutions, then we maybe don't have the right leadership, and maybe that decision has to be made. And the school board has to throw politics to the wind. Even if you like somebody or don't like them, you have to do what's right for the school system for us to have credibility and belief that you should be the person on the board. Now, I made that commentary, and I kind of wanted you to kind of fill in the blanks and give me your thoughts on what I said there.
Okay, well, I'll start with what jumps right out at me because it's actually two of the biggest words that were on my campaign literature for the primary, and those were accountability and transparency. And when some of that, I'll just call it like messiness or whatever happened last year in October, I was consistent. I didn't change my stance because I don't make a decision like that lightly. I think it through. I come from a family of 6 children. My father was an underground miner for 37 years. And he said, you better be able to back up if you back up whatever your stance is. Don't just think that you're privileged to be able to say this. People are going to say, pat you on the head and say, okay, Linda, it's good. You better be able to back it up. So I was consistent in that decision. I had my reasons. I was sorry that the news around the nation was not that we had made a definitive decision we were not able to give the reasons in public. And I disagree with that, by the way. I'll just throw that in as a sidebar. But I think it goes back to what you said. We only have one employee, and it's we don't have the operational authority. He or she is the boss of the people in the classrooms, the principals, etc. But informed oversight, Brian, is the phrase that's in our job description.
And let me put you on hold. Hold that thought, because I got to get a.
Okay. So where I left off was talking about that I try to be consistent and be able to back up my choices, even if they're hard choices. So I'm going to go back to your analogy that if there is someone who you feel is not getting results, if they've been there for an amount of time that you feel there's been adequate time, and this is where I consider the boundaries to be fair. You're not asking for miracles overnight, but you are asking for some results. And I want to use the slogan that's thrown around a lot, and that's number one.
Oh, you're breaking up. You're breaking up. I don't know why, but you broke up for a minute. You're locked up. Hello? Tracy, can you hear me?
I can hear.
Foster, hold on for a second. Hopefully it'll. We lost her for a minute. Let's see if she calls back in. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Do you want me to start from my answer again?
Yes.
Okay. So accountability and transparency, dealing with, referring back to what happened last October. And I know what we're talking about is the firing and then the rehiring of the superintendent. And because I'm a business owner, I'm going to compare this to when you're running a business, you want to see some results. I'm a solo practitioner right now. I used to be in a group practice, but either way, if what I'm doing in my business, if how I'm rolling out my services are not working, like for instance, I'm losing clients, people are not happy with my services, I'm not having callbacks, I'm not having physicians referring to me, then I have to go back and look at me, the accountability, and see what am I not doing? What am I doing or not doing that is not getting results? Why am I not getting more clients? Why do I not have more people that are being successful with my services? So even though that's a small scale, that's not like a giant budget, I look at my responsibility as a trustee the same way. It's my responsibility to ask questions of our one employee. It's my responsibility to be fiscally, basically cognitively aware of where that money is going. And it's overwhelming because as one trustee, I do not have any power. We are a collective body. So if you have a school board that is divided, that is not working as a united entity, it's going to be ultimately, and I have to take responsibility, my own 1/7 of the pie. It's going to be kids who suffer.
We're losing you again. We're losing you again. Oh. Okay.
So finishing up my answer, I just want to say that I believe that we have to be cognizant of all our job duties. We were elected to represent the people in our district, and our main clients are our students, our parents and families. I don't just say parents anymore because I have children that are being raised by other members of their family, my family, friends, etc. And they are looking to us to be aware of what is happening with our one employee and what's happening in our schools.
And our taxpayers.
Yeah, we're taxpayers, we're business owners, we're partners. Yeah. We are, and we're educators that are also parents and grandparents. And so we have to look at all of that as part of our community. If we are not inclusive of all those different parts, if we only have, like what you said, the good old boys network, if we only have the same parents and the same community members on the various committees, and we don't bring in different people or rotate them to hear everybody's voices, then we failed. We have failed because we need to be inclusive and we need that diversity of voices because we're a very diverse district. We can't just have this one little slice of our community having their voices heard. And right now, I'm sorry to say that in some areas, that's exactly what's happening.
Absolutely. Well, again, I've taken almost an hour of your time, so I thank you for actually being candid and open on what your beliefs and values are, because that is very important to us as we go forward. This is to the people on the Independent Black Voters Group. Folks, we must be independent. We must be independent thinkers. We must be educated voters. We must understand the stakes. It is so important. Every elected position will affect some facet of your life. If you're not informed and you're only upset, then you're happy with the status quo. If we want change, we have to demand change. We demand it at the ballot box. In many places, we are not allowed to vote. They are appointed positions. But if we are not active, educated, they might as well be appointed. So, Tracy, you have anything you want to say before I let Ms. Cavazos? Did I say it? Yes. Okay. Take it home. Tell us again who she is. Tell us again what she's running for and why she is the best candidate. Tracy, if you got something, jump in real quick and then we'll let her take it home.
Yeah, just make sure that you vote in November for Trustee Cavazos for District G, Danielle Ford for District F, and Brenda Zamora for District C. School board, those votes matter, they count. Mm-hmm. So we need them at the table, or we need them on the board. I'm sorry, excuse me. We need them to stay on the board, and we need to add Brenda to the board.
Okay, so it's your turn to take us home.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I'm Linda Cavazos. I'm the incumbent right now in District G. My district starts on the south by Warm Springs Road, and then it goes northeast all the way up to Hollywood Avenue, to Sunrise Mountain, loops around to older part of Central Vegas by Maryland Parkway and the old Boulevard Mall. I've been your trustee for approximately 4.5 years, almost 5 years. And I believe that I have the skill set as not only a trustee, but as an educator, a parent and a grandparent, and as a community member that wants to include all the diverse voices of the voters out there. I will be your voice for your neighborhoods, your schools, and your kids. And this is why I feel that I should be reelected. And I thank you, Brian and Tracy, for your time and for having me with you today.